r/AskReddit. Serious, what is the scariest thing that has happened to you in / near the woods? I'll start. When I was 13 to 14 years old, I was invited to a birthday party of a close friend of mine down the street. There were a dozen of us, or something around that, as he had invited close personal friends and a couple of classmates inside his basement living room, alternating turns on who gets to play Super Smash Melee on the GameCube. As the hours passed, the sweaty gaming by a dozen or so sweaty young teenagers were slowly but surely increasing the temperature of the room, as there was only a single window that was poorly circulating the air inside. We decided to head out for a quick breather to cool down and let the air in the room renew. This story takes place in Norway, a country not particularly known for its high criminality rates and psycho murders, besides the 2011 shootings that happened many years after I was done being a sweaty teenager, so parents tend to be quite fine with letting children and teenagers out into the dark for short periods of time. This is where the wood gets relevant. Behind the house, there was a forest. Now, forests aren't particularly rare at all, and besides stories of trolls and monsters, there wasn't all that much to be afraid of. The house and the forest was separated by a road, a single street light illuminating the pavement / sidewalk closest to the house. We were all gathered outside the back of the house getting some fresh air as one of us spot two reflective lights, looking sort of like eyes. After 5 minutes of back and forth speculating as to what it might be and tearing each other to go investigate, I rationally thought that it most likely was glass or something of the sort, simply reflecting the dimly lit street light. I walked away from the group, making my way towards the two eyes 30 or something yards / meters away. I came to the source and realized it was simply a sheet of clear plastic, picked it up, turned around and announced what it was. That's when something happened. My friends started yelling loudly, some started running towards the house. As the sheep of a teenager I was, and in my bewildered situation, I ran towards them as I didn't want to be left behind. I got into the hallway of the house where all the others had gathered, as well as my friend's parents, and saw that some of the others were crying. Unclear as to what just happened, I, of course, asked what was going on, what had disturbed everyone so much to the point of tears, something that teenage males are not particularly fond of doing in front of other male friends. Heaving for breath, the birthday kid told me that in the instance where I had turned around, a man, presumably in his mid-40s according to some of the others, had suddenly appeared behind me with his arms reached out in a choking hold. According to the ones that were the last to run back indoors who witnessed when I started to run, he had been inches away by the time I started sprinting back. The police weren't called, as, well, this was a group of teenagers claiming to have seen a man presumably ready to choke me at 2200 hours on a Saturday night, and nothing actually happened. However, I do think back and wonder, was I about to be kidnapped? Was he simply just going to strangle me to death in front of my friends? Or was it merely an act of collective imagination getting out of hand after having previously been spooked by reflective plastic? When I was a teenager, I worked nights part-time at the airport sorting packages for a major US carrier. I worked with my best friend, and since we both lived about 20 miles away from work, we'd carpool. He'd usually meet me at my house, and we'd drive down to work. My house at the time was nestled in at the edge of a state forest / heavily wooded area. One night we are coming back about 4 AM. I park my car, we get out, nothing unusual. Typical woodsy nighttime summer sounds, crickets, some birds. All of a sudden we hear a blood-curdling scream like I've never heard before. A woman was definitely in distress, or being raped or attacked or something in the woods not far from home. I run inside the house and probably give my parents a heart attack by shouting I need the shotgun. Dad jumps out of bed, and by this time he hears the screams as well. Nice cool night, windows open. We load up, grab flashlights, and 45 seconds later are out the back door, sprinting with my buddy towards the sounds. At the edge of the woods we stop and listen. Nothing. No screaming whatsoever. A minute goes by, we walk into the woods, shining our lights all over, walking down the trails, shining lights up into the trees, but we hear nothing again. We call out, we hang around for an additional 15 minutes or so before heading back. It was the oddest, most scary thing that happened while living there. We get back to the house and mom had called the sheriff's office, who took our info down and said they'd send a car out. No one ever came that night, but later the next morning, we did get a visit from a rural deputy who took our report. The deputy listened and then suggested it was likely a fox, big cat, bobcat, maybe even a mountain lion. I swear to this day it was a human female screaming for her life. But after searching the nearby woods during the day, we found nothing. No one was reported attacked or missing. A few weeks later, I'm home asleep at night, window open, and wake to my dachshund on my bed staring out the window, shaking uncontrollably. I look over, and there, framed perfectly by the light of the moon, was a large cat on its hind paws peering in the window. I jump out of bed, startling it, and it quietly jumps away. We never saw or heard anything after that. My family moved a few years later, so I guess the deputy was right. It probably was a big cat. But to this day those sounds still haunt me late at night when I'm out camping or spending time near the woods. When I was a police cadet in the Square, Quebec's provincial police, the cop who I was with got a radio from an officer patrolling around a sewage facility that was near a forest hotspot 14's thinking that they are Satanists to do their little ritual in the storm drain sewage pipes, asking for backup. When we arrived to the scene, no one was there, and the police car had all of its windows shattered, but no sign of the officer. After getting search and rescue, we searched all night for him until we found him unconscious in the woods. He told us that, after making the call, something hit him in the back of the head, and he blacked out. I used to walk my dog down near the river, along the same path every day, which had a section going through the woods. One day he just passed that section up and walked towards the sidewalk instead. I went along with it because it was the same amount of time. Either way, I happened to glance down the path as we passed it and saw two figures dart into the woods. I passed people all the time on that path, even after dark like that night, and I never got chilled like that before. Even the really weird stuff didn't really bother me. Something about those guys was different, and I think my dog knew it. He was a good dog. He used to knock me down and stand on me when he heard gunshots and stuff like that. He saved me a lot, but I couldn't save him. He died of a brain tumor when he was 3. I'll probably never have another dog, TBH. He was it. I don't know if this counts, but a few years ago I was diagnosed with psychotic depression, and I guess the scariest thing that happened to me in the woods was suddenly finding myself in the woods. I had a major psychotic episode one night before I was diagnosed and found myself deep in the woods. I live in a pretty forested area with no shoes on and no idea where I was or how I got there. No phone or flashlight either. I can't describe the fear and confusion of just suddenly being somewhere. We were on a school trip with the entire year. Late at night, we, only one class, walked through a small forest which had quite a lot of wild animals. The people guiding the tour were quite young and really careful, warning us about the animals, especially wild boars. As we entered the woods we didn't see anything as we were not allowed to take anything like flashlights or phones with us, so we couldn't attract or wake up any animals. We were not warned about us having to walk one specific part alone though. We were told it's because the boars are usually in that part and our footsteps could wake them. The first guide was the first to go and reach a safer area and light up her flashlight as a signal. I could hear a small river, and I was the second student to walk alone in the utter darkness. As I was trying my best not to get off the path by accident, I felt hopeless. It was one of the scariest things I've ever experienced in my life when I started to hear a breath and a sound not my own and a slight warmth near my leg, at which point I started to quietly try and not cry. I remember it feeling like eternity until I finally reached the guide and a guy from my class. I'm still not sure if it was really a boar I encountered, but I sure as heck was scared for my life. They gave the signal to the other guide, which was quickly answered, meaning the next one would go. Most people from my class ended up crying. I was camping with about 5 of my friends. We set up in the same forest as we would usually and just sat around talking with our flashlights on. One of my friends, I'll call him Kevin, said he quickly needed to go to the gas station. It was quite close to where we set up. so it wasn't that out of the ordinary. Once he had left, after around 2 to 3 minutes I started hearing a quiet high-ish pitch voice saying, "Come here," from where Kevin had left. When I asked my friends about it, they said it was most likely Kevin as his voice wasn't that deep either. But the voice kept getting deeper. Every time it would say "come here" it would sound slowed down, like if you slowed down a YouTube video. Eventually one of my other friends, let's call him John, stood up to go check out what it was. Then Kevin came up behind us carrying a couple snacks and drinks. When John turned around and saw Kevin, the voice in an extraordinarily deep pitch said, "Come here." It wasn't Kevin, because he was right behind us. So who was it? That was it. We all started booking it for the gas station. We then heard the voice coming closer and leaves crunching behind us. Once we got to the station we told the cashier to lock the doors. He was reluctant at first, but when he saw a dark figure rushing towards us he happily obliged. We got some other friends to pick us up, and let's say we never went back to that forest. Thank you for watching. Like the video and leave a comment if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel, follow on Twitter, and join the Discord and subreddit so you never miss a new video.